Hello, IM students. We're going to go over questions 11 and 12 on your study guide. They can be daunting questions, but I think if we take it step by step, you'll see that it's actually quite doable. So question number 11 says, determine the solution to the following expression. 3/4 times parentheses 6 minus half, close parentheses, minus 7/8 plus 0.5. So right away, there's two things we need to do before we can even get started on this. And the first thing I'm going to suggest is turning each decimal into a fraction. Now 0.5 is the same thing in fraction form as 1/2. 0.5 is like 50%, and we know that a half is 50%. So I'm going to rewrite this equation with 0.5 being 1/2. So I now have 3/4 times 6 minus 1/2 minus 7/8 plus 1/2. Next, I have to remember my PEMDAS, which means parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, adding, subtracting. When we say PEMDAS, what we really mean is something like this. I'm going to write it over here. Parentheses first, then exponents, then either multiplication or division, whichever comes first in our expression, and then either adding or subtracting, whichever one comes first in our expression. So I'm going to look at the parentheses first. In my parentheses, I have 6 minus a half. Well, I know if I take a half away from 6, I still have 5 wholes left over, and I have a half left over as well. So 6 minus a half is 5.5. So I'm going to rewrite this question as 3/4 times 5.5 minus 7/8 plus 1/2. This is my new expression. Well, I still have these parentheses, which means multiplication when I have these fractions next to it. But in order to multiply a fraction times another fraction, I have to turn this mixed number, which means a whole number and a fraction, into an improper fraction, which means I have to get rid of this whole number so it just looks like a normal fraction. So, in order to do that, we have to change this, and to do that, we take our denominator of 2 and multiply our whole number of 5, and then add our numerator. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. I'm going to write a little multiplication and addition sign. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11, and I keep the denominator the same. So now I have 3/4 times 11 over 2 minus 7/8 plus 1/2. Now I can multiply my two fractions, and I know how to do that because all I have to do is multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. So 3 times 11 gives me 33. 4 times 2 gives me 8. And then I'm going to bring down the minus 7/8 because I have not touched that, along with the plus 1/2. Now I do adding or subtracting, whichever comes first. So the first thing I have is 33/8 minus 7/8. This is the tricky part with adding and subtracting fractions. We have to remember that we must keep the denominator the same. So if our denominator is the same, which it is in this case, 8 and 8, then we can therefore subtract 33, our numerator, minus 7, our other numerator. And 33 minus 7 gives me 26/8. We keep the denominator the same. We don't subtract 8 minus 8. We keep it the same. So now I have 26/8 plus 1/2. Can I do this though? The answer is no. because my denominators are not the same. 26/8 plus 1/2, I need to change this 1/2 to give myself an equal denominator, which would be 8. So I need to make 2 into 8. And I do that by multiplying it by a factor of 4. So 2 times 4 gives me 8, which means 1 times 4 gives me 4. So my new fraction is 4/8. 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8, but I can use this because now my denominators are the same and I'm adding. So I only make the denominators the same when I'm either adding or subtracting a fraction. So 26 plus 4 gives me 30. And I do not add the denominators, I keep them the same. So my answer would be 30/8, or 30/8. So the solution to the following expression would be 30/8. Let's try this question one more time, giving another expression. It says, determine the solution to the following expression. 1/4 times the parentheses 9 minus a half, close parentheses, minus 7/8 plus 0.5. And we're going to start this problem just like we started the last problem. I'm going to change 0.5 into a fraction. And I know that 0.5 as a fraction is 1/2 because it is 50%. I'm also going to do in this one 9 minus a half. I know that 9 minus a half will give me 8.5. So I have 1/4 times 8.5, because 9 minus a half gives me 8.5, minus 7/8, I didn't touch that one, plus 1/2, because I know that 0.5 is equal to 1/2. Now I need to multiply what's in the parentheses and right outside of it. But I can't do that until I've changed this mixed number into an improper fraction. And remember, I do that by taking the denominator and multiplying the whole number, then adding the numerator. So 2 times 8 is 16, plus 1 gives me 17. And I keep the denominator the same, so it's going to be 17/2. And I bring down the minus 7/8 and the plus 1/2. So now I can multiply these two fractions because I do not have a whole number anymore. And to multiply fractions, all I do is the numerator times the numerator, which would be 1 times 17, which would be 17. And the denominator times the denominator, which is 4 times 2, which gives me 8. I then can subtract the 7/8. Well, I bring it down first, and I bring down the plus 1/2. Now I have to do subtracting and adding of fractions. And remember, when I'm subtracting and adding fractions, I have to keep the denominators the same in order to either subtract the numerator or add it. So I have to make sure they're the same, not keep them the same, excuse me. I have to make sure they're the same. So 17, so my denominators here for 17/8 minus 7/8 are the same. They're 8 and 8. So therefore I can do 17 minus 7, which would be 10. And then I keep the denominator the same. 17 minus 7 gives me 10, and I keep the denominator the same, which would give me 10/8. I now bring down the plus 1/2. But now I have to add. And again, I cannot add or subtract unless my denominators are the same. Well, my first fraction has a denominator of 8, and my second fraction has a denominator of 2. So I need to change this 2 into a denominator of 8. So again, 2 times what gives me 8? Well, 2 times 4 gives me 8. So I know if I change this by a factor of 4, I have to change the numerator by a factor of 4. So 1 times 4 gives me 4. So my new fraction would be 4/8. 10 eighths plus 4/8. I can only add if my denominators are the same, which they are. They're both 8. So I do 10 plus 4, which gives me 14. And I keep the denominator the same when I'm adding or subtracting fractions. And the answer would be 14/8. When we look back at it, it is a lot of work. But when we take it step by step and we follow our PEMDAS, which is parentheses, exponents, multiplying, dividing, then adding or subtracting, it really makes it quite doable. Good luck.